Duke Alistair Ravenshaw tore the medals from his wife's gown and dropped them onto the committee table. "Helena never served in the war," he declared. "She purchased these honors with my money." The silver crosses struck the polished oak with a sound far too small for the destruction they caused. Duchess Helena Ravenshaw remained standing beneath the painted dome of the Royal Veterans Committee, one hand resting against the place where the ribbons had been pinned. Around her sat 12 noblemen, 3 retired officers, and 2 crown auditors. None met her eyes. At the rear of the chamber, Colonel Marcus Vale watched with the restrained satisfaction of a man witnessing a verdict he had written himself. Helena turned toward her husband. Alistair's expression was rigid, but she saw the muscle tightening beside his jaw. He had not arrived at this accusation calmly. Someone had fed his pride, sharpened his suspicions, and persuaded him that condemning his wife was the only way to protect the Ravenshaw name. Yet the final choice had still been his. "You examined none of my hospital records," Helena said. "I examined enough. You refused to speak with a single surviving orderly. Because Marcus served at Bellmere, you did not." The lie passed through the chamber without challenge. Helena remembered Bellmere differently, not as a name on a campaign map, but as a ruined village church filled with blood and smoke. She remembered tearing altar linen into bandages, boiling instruments in a cooking pot, and choosing which wounded men had enough strength to survive the night. She had worked without her title because a duchess near the front would have caused scandal. The officers recorded her simply as Mrs. Hale, the surname of her late mother. Marcus knew that. He had brought wounded soldiers to her door. He had also ordered certain pages removed from the field register before the army withdrew. Lord Fenwick, chairman of the committee, cleared his throat. "Until the charge of fraud is resolved, the Crown must suspend all funds administered by Her Grace." Helena's composure nearly broke. "Those funds do not belong to me," she said. "They provide food, coal, and medicine for 12 disabled veterans." "They were granted on the strength of your alleged service," Fenwick replied. "We have no alternative." "There is always an alternative to punishing innocent men." Alistair looked away. That wounded her more deeply than the accusation. He knew the veterans by name. He had once sat beside Corporal Webb's bed and promised that no Ravenshaw soldier would be abandoned again. A Crown clerk placed 2 documents before Helena. The first suspended her pension authority. The second transferred temporary control of Ravenshaw House for wounded soldiers to Colonel Marcus Vale. Helena read the second page twice. "Marcus requested control of the hospital? He offered to protect it from your disgrace," Alistair said. Across the room, Marcus lowered his head with practiced humility. "The men should not suffer because of Lady Ravenshaw's mistakes." Lady Ravenshaw. He had deliberately withheld her ducal style before the committee had reached a verdict. Helena picked up the medals. One was the Silver Cross awarded for her work during the Bellmere retreat. A musket ball had struck its lower edge while she was dragging Lieutenant Samuel Price behind a collapsed stone wall. The impact had left a narrow crescent-shaped nick. Her thumb moved over a perfectly smooth edge. She brought the medal closer to the window. The engraved date was correct. The weight was almost right. Even the faded ribbon had been carefully imitated. But this was not her medal. "Where did you obtain these?" Helena asked. Alistair frowned. "From your dressing room." "Who collected them?" "My secretary," Marcus intervened. "I accompanied him, for the protection of his grace." Of course he had. Helena turned the false medal over. The artisan had copied the inscription from a written description, but the final letter of Bellmere curved in the continental style. Whoever commissioned it had probably used a foreign engraver, someone unlikely to ask questions about a British military decoration. The real medal had not been stolen for its silver. Something had been hidden inside its hinged clasp, a strip of oilskin bearing 4 names and the number of the missing field register. Helena had concealed it there after receiving a warning from a dying quartermaster. Marcus did not merely intend to disgrace her. He was searching for the evidence. A committee officer stepped forward. "Your Grace, we must ask you to surrender the hospital keys." Helena removed the iron ring from her reticule, but closed her fingers around it. "If Colonel Vale enters the records room, documents will disappear." Alistair's face hardened. This is precisely the sort of wild accusation that brought us here. Then appoint a neutral custodian. My cousin's integrity is not under examination. It should be. Marcus's expression changed for only an instant, but Helena saw it, a flash of fear rather than anger. Then the doors burst open. A tall man in a mud-stained military coat forced his way past the attendants. His face was gaunt, one side marked by a burn scar. He leaned heavily on a wooden crutch, while his damaged left leg dragged behind him. Several committee members rose. Lord Fenwick went white. General Graves? Nathaniel Graves had been officially dead for 6 years. He crossed the chamber slowly. Each strike of his crutch echoed beneath the dome. When he reached Helena, he lowered himself onto one knee and bowed his head. "Your Grace," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion, "you saved my life at Bellmere. I have returned to save your name." Helena stared at him. She had watched Nathaniel stop breathing on a blood-soaked operating table. She had restarted his heart with her hands, only to be told days later that the convoy carrying him had been destroyed. Marcus backed toward the committee table. Nathaniel turned to Alistair. "Your cousin buried an entire regiment," he said, "and your signature helped him do it." From inside his coat, he withdrew a sealed military order. The wax bore the Ravenshaw crest, and beneath Alistair's signature was a second name written in Helena's handwriting. Helena reached for the document, but General Nathaniel Graves kept one hand over it. "This is not a battlefield command," he said. "It is a transport authorization. That distinction is why Colonel Vale escaped suspicion for 6 years." Lord Fenwick ordered the chamber doors closed. The attendants obeyed while Marcus remained beside the committee table, outwardly composed. Alistair stared at Graves. "You were reported dead at Bellmere." "I was reported missing," Nathaniel replied. "Your cousin later changed the classification." Marcus folded his arms. "General Graves was last seen among the wounded. Until his identity is verified, nothing he says should be accepted as evidence." "Then verify it," Nathaniel said. "My service number, old injuries, and regimental correspondence are all held by the War Office. I have also brought 2 officers who served under me." He glanced toward the doors. 2 retired captains waited outside under Crown protection. Lord Fenwick shifted uncomfortably. "Why remain silent for 6 years?" "I did not remain silent. I spent 3 years in a foreign prison camp under the wrong name. When I returned, I discovered that my regiment had been listed as deserters, and that anyone asking about Bellmere was denied access to the records." Nathaniel removed his hand from the document. At the top was the heading of the Royal Military Transport Office. The order instructed the medical wagons, food carts, and reserve ammunition assigned to Bellmere to withdraw before sunset. The authorization carried Alistair's signature. Beneath it appeared a handwritten addition. "All surgeons and medical personnel are to depart with the convoy. No supplies are to remain for men unable to march." Helena examined the page without touching it. "The signature may be genuine," she said, "but the instruction beneath it was written afterward." Marcus gave a quiet laugh. "And you can determine that merely by looking?" The 2 inks dried differently. Alistair's signature has faded into the paper. The added instruction remains darker along the pen strokes. One of the Crown auditors leaned forward. "She may be correct," he said. "The order should be examined by an independent document specialist." Alistair looked at Marcus. "Did I sign this?" "You approved dozens of transport movements during the campaign," Marcus replied. "No one expected you to remember every wagon." "That was not my question." Marcus's expression remained calm. "Yes. The signature appears to be yours." Alistair's face tightened. 6 years earlier, he had served as civilian patron of the Royal Military Transport Office. His position had allowed him to approve funding and movement for medical and supply convoys. It had never given him the authority to abandon a regiment. "You told me the Bellmere papers concerned winter provisions," he said. "They did. The roads were failing, and the wagons had to be preserved for the main division." Nathaniel struck the floor once with his crutch. The main division had already crossed the River Lys. Bellmere was ordered to hold the eastern road until midnight. "When our medical wagons withdrew at 4, Colonel Vale assured us that replacements were coming. None came. By morning, the wounded had no bandages, The artillery had little ammunition, and the remaining men were surrounded. Helena remembered the ruined chapel. She had arrived with a civilian relief cart shortly before the road was cut off. For 3 days she treated soldiers using torn altar linen and medicine purchased under her mother's name. You used Alistair's transport authorization to remove everything that might have kept the regiment alive, she said. Marcus turned toward the committee. This is speculation. The withdrawal may have been a mistake, but it does not prove fraud. Nathaniel produced a smaller sheet from inside his coat. This is the receiving copy. At the bottom appeared Marcus Vale's signature, confirming that he had personally taken possession of the transport order before delivering it to Bellmere. For the first time, Marcus's composure weakened. Alistair read the signature twice. You told me you were nowhere near the transport office that week. I was carrying orders for 3 divisions. I cannot be expected to remember every document placed in my hands. You remembered Bellmere clearly enough to tell this committee that Helena had never been there, Nathaniel said. Marcus looked toward Helena. She was not listed among the army surgeons. No, Nathaniel replied. She was recorded as Mrs. Hale, a civilian nurse working under the surname of her late mother. Helena saw several committee members exchange glances. Lord Fenwick cleared his throat. Even if her grace served under another name, we still require proof that Mrs. Hale and Duchess Ravenshaw are the same woman. I can identify her, Nathaniel said. A single witness is insufficient. Then question the men she treated. Marcus spoke before Nathaniel could continue. The Bellmere regiment deserted. Their testimony cannot be considered reliable. Nathaniel's voice became quiet. 47 men were classified as deserters after they were abandoned. 29 died at Bellmere or in captivity. The others returned to England under assumed names because the army threatened to arrest them. Helena turned toward Lord Fenwick. If they were listed as deserters, their families received no death gratuities or pensions. That is correct, one of the auditors said. And those withheld funds should have remained in the military accounts. The auditor hesitated. In principle. In practice? He opened the ledger before him. The relevant account was closed 3 years after Bellmere. The remaining balance was transferred to a veterans relief program. Helena already knew which one. My hospital. Silence spread across the chamber. Marcus had not chosen the Ravenshaw House for wounded soldiers merely because Helena managed it. He had used its charitable accounts to conceal money stolen from the families of the abandoned regiment. Helena placed the false medal on the table. You replaced my medal because the real one contains information left by Bellmere's quartermaster. Then you arranged to control my hospital before anyone could examine its ledgers. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Have you found this alleged information? No. Then you have accused me without evidence. The same injustice you claim was done to you. Helena did not answer immediately. He was right about one thing. She still lacked the document that connected the transport order, the missing pensions, and the hospital accounts. If Marcus reached the records room first, she might never find it. She turned to Alistair. Appoint a neutral crown custodian over the hospital. No one enters my office or the records room until the accounts have been examined. Alistair looked toward Marcus. Only hours earlier, Helena had asked him to do precisely that. He had refused because questioning his cousin would have forced him to confront his own negligence. This time, he faced Lord Fenwick. Colonel Vale will not take control of the hospital. Marcus stepped forward. The committee has already signed the transfer. Then suspend it, Alistair said. Place the building under Crown Guard. Lord Fenwick reluctantly nodded to an attendant. Before the order could be carried out, someone knocked sharply at the chamber doors. A military messenger entered carrying a sealed envelope. This was delivered to Ravenshaw House for wounded soldiers less than an hour ago, he said. The hospital steward refused to obey it and sent it directly to the committee. Lord Fenwick opened the envelope. It contained an emergency inventory order authorizing Colonel Marcus Vale to remove every Bellmere ledger from the hospital and transfer them to the War Office. The authorization bore Alistair's signature and the Ravenshaw seal. Alistair stared at the date. This was signed this morning. Yes, Your Grace, the messenger said. Alistair slowly raised his eyes toward Marcus. I have been inside this chamber since dawn, he said. I never signed it. Marcus reached for the document. Helena took it first. The wax carried the Ravenshaw crest, but along its lower edge was a thin crescent-shaped fracture. It had been made by the old signet ring belonging to Alistair's father, a ring officially reported missing on the night of the old Duke's death. Someone still possessed that ring, and whoever had issued the false order was already searching Helena's hospital. Helena examined the false inventory order beneath the chamber lamps. The signature had been copied convincingly, but the seal told a different story. A narrow fracture crossed the raven's wing, the same flaw that had appeared on every document sealed with the old Duke's signet during the final year of his life. "And that ring disappeared 6 years ago," Alistair said. "Then someone has kept it for 6 years," Helena replied, "and used it whenever your living authority was inconvenient." Marcus extended his hand. "Allow me to examine the document." Helena folded it before he could touch it. "No." His expression hardened. "You have no authority to withhold evidence from this committee. Neither do you. The order names you as its beneficiary." One of the Crown auditors accepted the document from Helena and placed it inside a leather evidence case. He signed across the fastening and asked Nathaniel and Lord Fenwick to witness the seal. Alistair turned toward the chairman. "Send officers to the hospital immediately." Fenwick hesitated. "The committee has not established that a crime has occurred." "A false order bearing my signature is a crime," Alistair said, "and if the records are removed while we debate procedure, this committee will have helped destroy the evidence." Helena recognized the change in his voice. It was not yet courage. It was the fear of seeing his own authority used against him. But for the first time that morning, his decision protected someone other than himself. Lord Fenwick ordered 6 Crown officers to secure the hospital. Helena faced Nathaniel. "You said the real medal contains the quartermaster's information. Where is it?" Nathaniel glanced toward Marcus before answering. "I removed it from your dressing room 3 days ago." Alistair stepped toward him. "You entered my house?" "I entered Helena's rooms with the assistance of a servant who remembered me from Bellmere. I knew Marcus intended to search them. Where is the medal now?" "In a safe place. The strip hidden inside its clasp identifies the register section where the withheld payments were recorded. I will surrender it only to a Crown auditor after the hospital ledgers are secured." Helena understood his caution. Someone had replaced pages in the military archive, copied her handwriting, and obtained the old Ravenshaw seal. Until they knew who had been compromised, no single official could be trusted with all the evidence. Marcus looked toward Fenwick. "This hearing has become absurd. A disgraced woman and a man declared dead are controlling Crown documents while accusing an officer without proof." Nathaniel met his gaze. "You personally carried the order that removed our medical wagons. Your signature confirms it." "My signature confirms only that I received a transport paper, and 18 men died before sunrise because of what was added to it." Marcus's jaw tightened. A distant bell began ringing beyond the committee chamber. Once, twice, then again and again. Helena crossed to the window. A gray column of smoke was rising above the eastern rooftops. The Veterans' Hospital stood in that direction. The chamber doors opened before anyone could speak. A young Crown officer stumbled inside, breathless and blackened with soot. "The hospital records room has been set on fire." Helena seized her cloak. "Were the patients evacuated?" "The staff are moving them into the courtyard, but the smoke has reached the upper ward." She turned to Nathaniel. "Remain here. Do not release the medal or the transport order to anyone without 2 Crown witnesses." Then she faced Alistair. "Keep Marcus inside this chamber." Marcus stepped forward. "You cannot imprison me on the strength of a fire I did not start." "No," Alistair said, "but the committee can require you to remain while evidence connected to you is being destroyed." Marcus looked at him with open contempt. It was the first time Helena had seen him forget to behave like a loyal cousin. She left before either man could say more. By the time Helena reached Ravenshaw House for wounded soldiers, smoke filled the street. The fire had begun inside the records room rather than on the roof, but the closed door had slowed its spread. Patients crowded the courtyard in blankets and nightclothes. Nurses moved between them, counting names and treating those who had inhaled smoke. The hospital steward met Helena near the gate. 38 patients accounted for," he said. "We are missing Corporal Webb and Mr. Daly." Where were they last seen? Webb was helping Daly from the upper ward. Helena looked at the eastern side of the building. Smoke was escaping through 2 windows, but no flames had yet reached the upper floor. The servants' staircase is separated from the records corridor by a brick wall, she said. If the fire doors are closed, the east passage may still be clear. She divided the staff into groups. Continue the count. Move every patient across the square in case the roof catches. Bring wet blankets to the east entrance. No one opens the records room door. The sudden air could spread the fire. A fire brigade wagon arrived as she finished speaking. Helena gave the captain the building plan and showed him the pump connection behind the laundry yard. Alistair appeared on horseback several minutes later. You were meant to keep Marcus inside the chamber, Helena said. He is under Crown Guard. Fenwick objected. So I left Nathaniel and 2 auditors to witness it. Alistair looked toward the smoking building. What do you need? Helena was surprised by the question. Take 2 attendants through the laundry entrance. The eastern stair leads to the upper ward. Find Webb and Daly, then come out by the same route. You are not coming? I am going to the dispensary passage. If the inner fire door is open, someone deliberately allowed the smoke into the patient's wing. They entered from opposite sides. The dispensary corridor was dark but still passable. Helena covered her mouth with a wet cloth and remained close to the floor. She reached the iron fire door connecting the corridor to the records wing. It stood open. A wooden wedge had been driven beneath it. This had not been an accidental lamp fire. Someone had intended the smoke to reach the wards and force the entire hospital to be evacuated. Helena removed the wedge and pulled the heavy door shut. On the floor nearby lay a brass key. It was a copy of the key to her private office. The copy was newly cut. Fine metal filings still clung inside its teeth. From beyond the wall came the sound of water striking flame. The fire brigade had entered the records wing. Helena returned to the courtyard just as Alistair emerged carrying the unconscious Mr. Daly. An attendant supported Corporal Webb beside him. Webb was coughing violently, but alive. Helena helped lower Daly onto a blanket and checked his breathing. His pulse was weak but steady. She ordered one of the nurses to give him air and keep him on his side. Alistair bent forward, fighting for breath. You knew that stair would remain clear, he said. I designed the evacuation plan. A flicker of shame crossed his face. He had once praised her for improving the building. That morning he had handed it to Marcus without asking how it functioned or what would happen to the men inside. Helena turned back to Webb. Did you see anyone near the records room? He nodded weakly. A woman came before the smoke. Gray traveling veil. She said the committee had sent her to collect your private account books. Did you recognize her? No, but when she unlocked your office, her glove caught on the door. Webb opened his soot-darkened hand. Inside lay a small gold ornament shaped like a serpent's head. Helena recognized it immediately. It had broken from the ring Lady Cecily Vale wore at every public occasion. Marcus's widowed sister had spent months visiting Ravenshaw House, comforting Alistair while quietly persuading him that Helena was ambitious, secretive, and unstable. Now she had entered Helena's office with a copied key. What did she take? Helena asked. A narrow black ledger and a bundle of military notices. She gave them to a man waiting in the laundry yard. Did you see him? Only his coat. It belonged to one of Colonel Vale's regimental servants. The fire captain approached carrying a scorched metal box. We found this beneath a fallen shelf. The lock was broken before the fire reached it. Helena opened the box. The original Bellmere ledgers were gone. Only one half-burned page remained trapped beneath the damaged lining. Helena lifted it carefully by the edges. The page recorded a pension owed to the widow of Sergeant William Hart, one of the men classified as a deserter after Bellmere. The same amount appeared again 3 months later as an anonymous donation to Helena's hospital. At the bottom, that donation had been transferred to a supplier named Vale and Cresswell Medical Provisions. Helena knew every merchant employed by the hospital. Vale and Cresswell did not exist. Alistair read the entry over her shoulder. Marcus used the hospital to receive the stolen pensions. To conceal them, Helena corrected. He placed the money among legitimate donations, then paid it to false suppliers he controlled. And Cecily has taken the full ledger. Webb caught Helena's sleeve. There was one more thing. The woman said they had to reach the river before the afternoon inspection. Helena looked at the copied key, the broken serpent ornament, and the scorched ledger page. Cecily had not burned the records because they were useless. She had taken the evidence and used the fire to hide its disappearance. Somewhere between the hospital and the river, the black ledger was still within reach. But Marcus now knew Helena had survived the accusation and had begun following his money. Helena carried the scorched ledger page back to the Royal Veterans Committee under Crown Guard. Nathaniel remained in the chamber. Marcus stood beside the window, watched by 2 officers. His expression changed when Helena placed Cecily's broken serpent ornament on the table. "This was found outside my records room," Helena said. Corporal Webb saw Lady Cecily leave with a black ledger shortly before the fire. Marcus barely glanced at it. "My sister owns several similar pieces. Then she will have no difficulty explaining where she was." Helena placed the surviving ledger page beside the false inventory order. A Crown auditor compared it with the military pension records. "Sergeant William Hart's widow was owed £42, he said. The payment was withheld after he was classified as a deserter. And 3 months later," Helena added, "the same sum entered my hospital as an anonymous donation." The money had then been transferred to Vale and Cresswell Medical Provisions. A clerk searched the registered suppliers. "No company exists under that name." Alistair looked at Marcus. "Who is Cresswell?" "My sister's late husband," Marcus replied. The room went silent. Helena requested every Bellmere pension account and 3 years of hospital transactions. By evening, the auditors had found 11 identical transfers. Money withheld from missing soldiers had entered the hospital as donations, then disappeared through false suppliers connected to Cecily's household agent. It was not yet enough to prove Marcus had created the scheme, but it established that Helena had not stolen the funds. Lord Fenwick reluctantly postponed the judgment against her. Marcus moved toward the doors. "Then I am free to leave." Nathaniel blocked his path with his crutch. "There are 3 Bellmere survivors in London who can confirm you delivered the altered transport order." Marcus produced a military warrant. "The men you describe remain legally classified as deserters. I am authorized to take them into custody." Helena examined the warrant. Unlike the document found earlier, its seal and date appeared genuine. "You prepared this before today's hearing," she said. "I prepared it when I learned fugitives were entering London." "You mean witnesses?" Marcus smiled coldly. "The law calls them deserters, until this committee rules otherwise." Alistair stepped between them. "Where are they being taken?" "To a military holding facility." "Which one?" Marcus did not answer. A young clerk entered carrying a message from the harbor magistrate. 3 military prisoners had been placed aboard a merchant vessel, under orders bearing Marcus's signature. The ship was scheduled to leave for Calais before nightfall. Nathaniel's face drained of color. "Samuel Price is one of them." Helena turned to Alistair. "Marcus does not intend to imprison those men. He intends to remove them before they can testify." Alistair looked at the cousin he had trusted for most of his life. "Place Colonel Vale under committee guard." Lord Fenwick struck the table. "You have no authority to order that." "Then you issue the order," Alistair said. "Or explain publicly why you allowed a suspect to transport 3 witnesses beyond Crown jurisdiction." Fenwick hesitated too long. Helena finally understood. Marcus had not corrupted only the military records. He had someone inside the committee protecting him. She gave the scorched ledger page to a Crown auditor and instructed him to make 3 witnessed copies. Then she faced Nathaniel. "Remain here and protect the evidence." "Where are you going?" "To stop that ship legally," Helena replied. "If Marcus wants the world to believe those men are deserters, I will force him to prove it before they leave English soil." Helena reached the eastern docks with Alistair and 2 Crown auditors shortly before sunset. The merchant vessel Mercy Jane had already cast off 1 mooring line. Armed guards stood beside the gangplank while sailors prepared to release the second. A harbor magistrate met them near the customs office. "I received your message," he said, "but Colonel Vale's papers carry a military exemption. I cannot delay the vessel without legal cause." Helena examined the departure documents. The first authorized the transfer of 3 deserters to a coastal military prison. The second exempted the ship's military cargo from inspection. Both carried Marcus's signature. The exemption also carried Alistair's approval. "Did you sign this?" Helena asked. Alistair read the date. "No, I have been before the committee since dawn." The magistrate remained cautious. "Your Grace's signature appears genuine." "It was copied," Helena said, "and even if it were genuine, the document contradicts the prisoner warrant." She placed both pages beside each other. "The warrant orders the men to be taken to a military holding facility within England. The ship's papers list Calais as its destination. Colonel Vale has no authority to transport British prisoners beyond Crown jurisdiction without a separate court order." The magistrate examined the documents again. There was no such order. "Hold the ship," he commanded. The guards near the gangplank refused to move. "Our instructions come from Colonel Vale," their sergeant said. Alistair stepped forward. "And mine come from the Crown magistrate standing before you. Lower your weapons." The sergeant looked at the officers surrounding the dock and reluctantly obeyed. Below deck, the magistrate found Samuel Price and 2 other Bellmere survivors locked inside a storage compartment. Their wrists were bound, but none had been entered on the ship's official passenger list. Samuel recognized Helena immediately. "Mrs. Hale." The name passed quietly between the 3 men. For 6 years, Helena's service had existed only in the memories of people officially branded as cowards. Now 3 of them stood before a Crown magistrate and identified her without hesitation. "Who arrested you?" Helena asked. "Men wearing Colonel Vale's regimental coat," Samuel replied. "They said we would face a military inquiry. Only after we reached the docks did we learn the ship was leaving England." One of the other survivors, former Sergeant Thomas Bell, removed a folded paper from inside his boot. It was a surviving page from the Bellmere pay register. "The regiment's clerk gave this to me before we were captured," he explained. "It lists the men declared deserters and the payments owed to their families." The amounts matched the transfers Helena had found in her hospital accounts. A customs officer searched the adjoining compartment and discovered a locked dispatch case. Inside were copied pension notices, blank prisoner warrants, and 3 hospital invoices issued by Vale and Cresswell Medical Provisions. Every invoice directed payment to the same private bank account, but the black hospital ledger was not there. "Lady Cecily was aboard," Samuel said. "She left 10 minutes before you arrived, carrying a narrow case." "Which direction?" Helena asked. "West, in a hired carriage." Alistair ordered an officer to pursue her, but Helena stopped him. "She expects us to chase the ledger, secure the witnesses and the documents we already have. If these disappear, we lose everything." It was a small decision, but an important one. Helena would not risk 3 lives for a single piece of evidence. The magistrate placed the survivors under Crown protection. The ship's captain admitted that Marcus's agent had paid him to transport the men as unnamed military cargo. He claimed he had not known they were being removed unlawfully. When the documents were sealed, Samuel asked to speak with Helena alone. "Colonel Vale did not build this scheme merely because the Duke failed to read his papers," he said. Helena waited. At Bellmere, Marcus told General Graves that Alistair would never question the transport order. Why? Because Marcus possessed evidence against the old Duke of Ravenshaw. He said Alistair would sign anything rather than allow his father's name to be investigated. Helena looked toward her husband. Alistair stood several yards away, speaking with the magistrate, yet the tension in his face revealed that he had heard enough to understand what Samuel was saying. Helena approached him. "What did Marcus know about your father?" Alistair dismissed the officers around him. "My father supplied provisions to the army. Some contracts were questioned after his death." "Questioned for what?" He did not answer. Helena felt the shape of the truth before he spoke it. "You knew Marcus was using your signatures. I knew he sometimes completed transport forms after I signed them. And you allowed it. He promised to keep my father's accounts from becoming public." Helena stared at him. Alistair had not merely trusted the wrong man. He had surrendered his authority deliberately because Marcus's silence protected the Ravenshaw name. "When I warned you about the hospital accounts," she said, "you already knew he had used documents bearing your signature. I did not know about the stolen pensions, but you knew enough to investigate." "Yes." And instead, you accused me." Alistair lowered his eyes. Helena remembered him tearing the medals from her gown. Marcus had supplied the lie, but Alistair had accepted it, because condemning his wife was easier than confronting the crimes hidden behind his family name. A Crown officer returned from the Western Road. "Lady Cecily's carriage was found abandoned near Ravenshaw House," he reported. "She was gone, but this remained inside." He handed Helena an envelope addressed to Alistair. Inside was a draft petition to an ecclesiastical court. It accused Helena of concealing a prior betrothal and requested that the Ravenshaw marriage be declared invalid. At the bottom was Alistair's signature. Helena looked up at him. "When did you sign this?" His silence answered before his words did. The night before the hearing. Marcus had prepared to destroy Helena's reputation, but Alistair had prepared to erase her from his family entirely. Alistair did not deny signing the petition. "Marcus told me your conviction would bring scandal upon the Ravenshaw name," he said. "He claimed an annulment was the only way to protect the estate." "And you agreed before hearing my evidence?" "Yes." Helena folded the petition. "You did not simply believe Marcus. You prepared to benefit from my disgrace." Alistair had no answer. The 3 Bellmere survivors were placed under Crown protection. Their testimony, the pay register page, and the documents found aboard the ship were sealed by the harbour magistrate. But Marcus still controlled the missing hospital ledger, and Lord Fenwick could prevent the evidence from reaching a fair hearing. When they returned to Ravenshaw House, Crown officers were waiting with Lady Cecily. She had been found inside the old servants' wing, attempting to destroy account books in a furnace. The black hospital ledger had been recovered, but several final pages were missing. Cecily looked at Helena without apology. "Marcus will sacrifice me before he allows himself to be charged." "You helped him steal from soldiers' families," Helena said. "You entered my office, took my records, and started a fire that endangered helpless men. I did not intend the fire to reach the wards." You wedged open the fire door. Cecily's composure faltered. Helena continued, "If you testify truthfully, I will ask the Crown to consider your cooperation. I will not ask for immunity." After a long silence, Cecily agreed. She admitted that Vale and Cresswell was a false company created to receive the stolen pensions. Marcus directed the payments, while she used her household agent to open the accounts and issue fabricated invoices. "The black ledger shows where the money entered," Cecily said, "but the names of the men Marcus paid are kept elsewhere." "Where?" Helena asked. "In a green parliamentary account book. Marcus used it to record payments to members of the Veterans Committee." "Lord Fenwick?" Cecily looked away. That was answer enough. She explained that Marcus had hidden the green book inside the old Duke's private archive beneath the Ravenshaw library. Alistair knew the chamber existed but had never allowed Helena to enter it. Helena turned to her husband. "What is in that archive?" Alistair's face had gone pale. "My father's military supply contracts. The contracts Marcus used to control you? Yes. Even now he had concealed the truth until someone else forced it from him." Helena felt the last of her uncertainty disappear. Whatever remained between them could not be repaired by remorse alone. "Open the archive," she said. Alistair led the Crown auditors to the library and released the concealed panel behind the shelves. Inside were invoices proving that the old Duke had sold spoiled provisions to the army. Beside them sat a locked green dispatch case. Alistair handed Helena the key. "You should open it." "No," she replied. "A Crown auditor will open it, with all of us as witnesses." The auditor broke the seal. Inside lay the green account book, the missing pages from Helena's hospital ledger, and dozens of blank transport forms bearing Alistair's signature. The most recent entry recorded a payment to Lord Fenwick. Its purpose was written in Marcus's own hand. Conviction of Duchess Helena Ravenshaw. Appointment to the Royal Veterans Fund. The final payment was due the following morning. Marcus had not only purchased Helena's disgrace, he had purchased the committee that would judge her. The Crown auditors worked through the night. The black hospital ledger showed the stolen pensions entering Helena's accounts as anonymous donations. The green book showed the money leaving through false suppliers and reaching Marcus, Cecily, and members of the Veterans Committee. Lord Fenwick appeared 12 times. Alistair's blank transport forms explained how Marcus had removed the medical convoy from Bellmere. The survivors' register page connected that decision to the men later declared deserters. For the first time, the entire scheme could be followed from beginning to end. Cecily signed a sworn statement admitting her role in the false companies, the theft of Helena's records, and the hospital fire. She received no promise of immunity. Shortly before dawn, a message arrived from Marcus. He offered to withdraw every accusation against Helena if she surrendered the Green Book and persuaded the Bellmere survivors to leave London. Helena sent only one reply: "The evidence will be presented publicly." The hearing opened that morning before a crowded gallery. Reporters, veterans, and soldiers' families filled the chamber. Marcus stood beside Lord Fenwick as though he remained Helena's accuser rather than the subject of the evidence. Fenwick called the hearing to order. Duchess Helena Ravenshaw is charged with falsely claiming military service, misusing veterans' funds, and coercing men legally classified as deserters. Helena entered carrying witnessed copies of the 2 ledgers. Samuel Price and the other survivors followed her. Nathaniel Graves entered last, carrying the original transport order. Whispers spread through the hall. Helena placed the Green Book before the committee. "This records payments made to the men responsible for judging me." Fenwick did not open it. "The book was taken from a private ducal archive," he said. "It is inadmissible." Alistair rose from the witness section. "The archive belongs to my estate. I authorized the search." "You are implicated in the same documents," Fenwick replied. "Your permission has no value." Helena looked along the committee table. 2 members named in the ledger refused to meet her eyes. This was not a hearing designed to discover the truth. It was the final stage of Marcus's bargain. Marcus stepped forward. "These deserters expect to recover pensions by supporting the woman who concealed their theft. Their testimony is purchased." Samuel's hands tightened, but Helena stopped him from answering. "Then allow the harbor magistrate to describe how your officers tried to remove them from England," she said. Fenwick struck his gavel. "No testimony will be heard until the charges against the Duchess are resolved." A voice came from the rear of the chamber. "Then Lord Fenwick should not be presiding over them." A royal commissioner entered with crown officers. He carried a sealed order temporarily removing Fenwick from control of the hearing, while the bribery allegations were examined. Marcus's confidence finally slipped, but before Fenwick surrendered his seat, he placed one last document on the table. It was Helena's annulment petition. "The Duchess faced removal from the Ravenshaw marriage," he said. "She therefore had a financial motive to fabricate this conspiracy." Helena looked toward Alistair. The petition was no longer merely proof of his betrayal. Marcus intended to use it as proof of her guilt. The royal commissioner took Fenwick's seat and ordered the annulment petition entered into evidence. Marcus addressed the chamber first. "Duchess Helena knew her husband intended to end their marriage," he said. "If convicted of fraud, she would lose her position, income, and influence. She therefore persuaded 3 deserters to support her invented account of Bellmere." Helena did not answer him. She looked at Alistair. The commissioner followed her gaze. "Duke Ravenshaw, did your wife know of this petition before today?" "No." "When was it prepared?" "The night before I accused her." "Who recommended it?" "Colonel Vale." Marcus interrupted. "I merely advised the Duke to protect his estate." Alistair turned toward him. "You promised to provide a witness who would falsely claim Helena had concealed a prior betrothal." The gallery erupted in whispers. The commissioner raised his hand for silence. "Did the Duchess participate in preparing this document?" "No," Alistair said. "She had no knowledge of it." The petition did not prove Helena's motive. It proved that Marcus and Alistair had planned to remove her before she could defend herself. Marcus changed his attack. He accused the Bellmere survivors of supporting Helena to recover their pensions. Samuel Price answered first. "I did not return for money. I returned because Colonel Vale used the Duke's authorization to remove our medical wagons, then called us deserters when we survived." Thomas Bell presented the remaining page of the Bellmere pay register. A Crown auditor compared its names and amounts with the black hospital ledger. The figures matched exactly. Helena then presented the false supplier invoices found aboard the Mercy Jane. Their payments led to the same account named in Marcus's Green Book. Marcus remained composed. "Those records prove that money was stolen," he said. "They do not prove I altered the Bellmere order." Nathaniel placed the transport authorization before the commissioner. "This bears Colonel Vale's signature acknowledging receipt." "I received hundreds of papers," Marcus replied. Someone else could have added the withdrawal instruction afterward. It was his strongest defense. The authorization showed that Marcus had handled the document, but not when the extra instruction had been written. The commissioner summoned an examiner from the military records office. He confirmed that Alistair's signature and the withdrawal instruction had been written with different ink, but he could not identify the person who had added the words. Marcus almost smiled. Then an elderly clerk entered under Crown escort. Nathaniel recognized him as Mr. Harrow, the former dispatch clerk of the Royal Military Transport Office. Harrow carried a bound register containing copies of every order issued during the Bellmere retreat. "Colonel Vale instructed me to enter the additional withdrawal line after the Duke had signed the authorization," he testified. "I refused. He dismissed me and completed it himself." Marcus stared at him. "You have been silent for 6 years. I reported it to Lord Fenwick," Harrow replied. "He threatened to charge me with altering military records." The commissioner opened the register. Beside the original transport entry, Harrow had written a private notation on the same day. Text amended after approval by Colonel M. Vale. Its ink and paper were consistent with the rest of the 6-year-old record. Fenwick rose from the witness bench. That notation could have been added at any time. The examiner inspected the binding. The page had never been removed, and later entries had been written across its inner edge. Altering it without disturbing the book would have been nearly impossible. Marcus's composure finally broke. Helena stood before the committee. "The evidence forms one chain. My husband signed a transport authorization without reading the completed document. Colonel Vale added the order withdrawing Bellmere's medical supplies. He then classified the survivors as deserters, diverted their pensions through my hospital, and paid members of this committee to convict me when I discovered the accounts." She placed the false medal beside the ledgers. "He replaced my medal and forged my handwriting because my real service at Bellmere connected me to the men he needed the country to forget." Marcus looked toward the doors. Crown officers had already closed them. The commissioner ordered Marcus and Fenwick detained pending criminal charges. But before the guards reached him, Marcus turned to Alistair. "You blame me now," he said. "Tell them how many warnings your wife gave you. Tell them how much you already knew before you tore those medals from her gown." The chamber fell silent. Marcus's crimes were becoming clear. Alistair's responsibility had yet to be spoken aloud. Alistair rose before the same audience that had watched him tear the medals from Helena's gown. "She warned me about the hospital accounts 3 months ago," he said. "She asked me to examine the Bellmere records and speak to the surviving orderlies. I refused." The royal commissioner asked, "Why?" "Because Marcus knew my father had profited from fraudulent military contracts. I allowed him to complete documents after I signed them because his silence protected the Ravenshaw name." Alistair looked toward Helena. "When Marcus accused my wife, I accepted his story because it protected me from my own cowardice. I condemned her without examining her evidence. Then I signed a false annulment petition, so her disgrace would no longer belong to my family." No one spoke. "Colonel Vale deceived me," Alistair continued, "but he succeeded because I chose pride over responsibility and reputation over my wife." Helena felt no relief. His confession mattered, but it could not repair what he had deliberately destroyed. The commissioner ordered the evidence read into the record: Alistair's transport authorization, Marcus's later addition withdrawing the medical convoy, Harrow's original dispatch notation, the Bellmere pay register, the hospital ledger, the false supplier invoices, the Green Book recording payments to Fenwick and other committee members. Samuel Price and the 2 survivors identified Helena as Mrs. Hale, the woman who had treated them in the ruined Bellmere chapel. Nathaniel Graves presented Helena's real medal. Inside its clasp remained the quartermaster's note directing investigators to the missing pension records. "The medal is not the proof of her service," Nathaniel said. "We are." The commissioner formally dismissed every charge against Helena. Her commendations and authority over the hospital were restored. He then cleared the Bellmere survivors of desertion and ordered the withheld pensions reviewed for repayment to them and the families of the dead. Marcus, Fenwick, and the implicated committee members were taken into Crown custody pending criminal trial. Cecily remained under guard, with her cooperation recorded, but her crimes unchanged. Before leaving the chamber, Alistair removed his insignia as patron of the Royal Veterans Fund. "I resign every military and charitable office I hold," he said. "The Ravenshaw estate will repay whatever cannot be recovered from Marcus's property." Helena faced him. "That is restitution," she said. "It is not forgiveness, I know." For once, he asked nothing from her. The commissioner returned Helena's medals, but she did not pin them to her gown. She closed them inside her hand. Her name had been restored. What remained was deciding whether she would continue carrying his. The criminal trials lasted several months. Marcus Vale was convicted of falsifying military records, stealing veterans' pensions, unlawfully transporting witnesses, and conspiring to obstruct the Royal Commission. His military rank was removed, and his property was seized to repay the Bellmere families. Lord Fenwick and the committee members named in the Green Book lost their offices and faced prosecution for bribery and conspiracy. Cecily's cooperation reduced her sentence but did not erase it. She was held responsible for the false companies, the theft of Helena's records, and the hospital fire. The Bellmere survivors were formally cleared of desertion. Their withheld pay and pensions were restored, along with compensation for the families of the men who had died. Alistair was not charged with creating Marcus's scheme. There was no proof that he knew the transport authorization would be altered. But his negligence and concealment still carried consequences. He lost every military and charitable office he held. The public accounts of the Ravenshaw estate were placed under independent supervision, and part of his property was used to restore the stolen pensions. Alistair also transferred the hospital land and a permanent endowment into an independent trust controlled by Helena and elected veterans. No future Duke of Ravenshaw would possess automatic authority over it. Then he signed a deed of separation, granting Helena her own residence, income, staff, and complete control of her work. He placed the document before her in the empty committee chamber. "I will not ask you to forgive me," he said, "nor will I pretend that repairing the damage entitles me to your return." Helena read every clause before signing. "You once believed destroying the petition would undo the choice behind it. I did. And now? Now I understand that remorse is not a payment that purchases forgiveness." Helena signed her name. She did not promise to return. She did not promise never to forgive him. She simply refused to let his regret decide her future. 6 months later, the rebuilt Veterans Hospital opened under a new name, Bellmere Hospital. Its board included Helena, Nathaniel Graves, Samuel Price, Thomas Bell, and 4 veterans elected by the patients. Alistair had no seat upon it. Nathaniel's health improved enough for him to walk with a cane. Samuel became responsible for assisting soldiers whose records had been lost or falsified. Mr. Harrow was appointed keeper of the hospital archive so that no single official could alter its documents again. Alistair remained at the Ravenshaw country estate. He visited the hospital only when invited and never entered a board meeting. On opening day, he stood at the rear of the crowd while the names of the Bellmere soldiers were unveiled on a stone memorial. Helena saw him but did not approach. A young nurse brought her the 2 silver crosses. "Would you like me to pin them on, Your Grace?" Helena looked at the medals that Alistair had once torn from her gown before an audience. "No," she said. "They belong beside the names." The medals were mounted beneath glass in the entrance hall, beside the scorched ledger page, the Bellmere register, and the quartermaster's note. They no longer represented the honor granted to one duchess. They preserved the truth stolen from an entire regiment. Helena then removed the hospital keys from her pocket. Months earlier, a committee officer had demanded that she surrender them while her husband watched in silence. Now Samuel Price stood beside the new doors, and the veterans waited behind her. Helena placed the largest key into the lock. She did not look back at Alistair. She turned it herself and opened the hospital.